Some of the worst leadership habits I've seen started as a very, very good advice. Listen more, avoid arguments, see things from the other person's perspective, be friendly, make people feel important. Really excellent advice until you disappear. Because there is a difference between being socially intelligent and constantly adjusting yourself to make everyone else comfortable. And I think we need to talk about that difference, especially when we talk about women in leadership. Hi, I'm Kim Seidler, and this is Power, Presence, Purpose, the podcast about leadership that goes beyond performance. And today's episode started in a slightly different way as I expected, because I was cleaning up my photos on my mobile phone and desktop, which, by the way, is apparently where Leadership Insights live now, not in Harvard Business Review, in my camera roll. And I found photos from a Dale Carnegie training I attended. And there were all these principles, very famous principles. Be a good listener. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. Begin in a friendly way. Avoid unnecessary arguments. Let the other person do a great deal of the talking. And I looked at them and thought, yes, of course, this is good communication advice. But then another thought came up. I've coached so many leaders and really they are all doing this, but too much. They listen, they understand, they accommodate, they reflect, they give people space, they consider everyone's perspective, and somehow they are still not influential. In fact, sometimes they are almost invisible. And that's when I realized something. The problem is not the advice. The problem is what happens when leadership advice meets identity. So let me explain. A communication technique never enters an empty room. So you don't just hear, be a good listener. You hear that advice through everything you already believe about yourself, about leadership, about conflict, about what makes you likable, about what makes you safe, about what makes you a good woman or man, a good employee, a good leader. And this is exactly why I developed my identity flow framework, because leadership is never just behavior. We love talking about behavior. Speak up more, be more assertive, listen actively, set boundaries, delegate, give feedback. Great. But behavior is only one part of the system. In the identity flow framework, I look at 4 flows: cognitive flow, self-narrative flow, behavioral flow, and relational flow. And all 4 influence each other. So let's take one simple piece of advice. Be a good listener. Sounds harmless, and it is. But let's run it through the identity flow framework. First, cognitive flow. So this is about thinking and narrative, the meaning you give the things. Maybe somewhere along the way you learned good leaders don't dominate conversations. Good leaders make space. Good leaders are emotionally intelligent. Good leaders don't need to prove themselves. Again, none of this is necessarily wrong. But beliefs shape perception. So now you're sitting in a leadership meeting. You have an opinion, a very strong opinion, right? But someone else starts talking and your brain says, listen, don't interrupt, give them space, be professional. And suddenly, you are not making a conscious leadership decision anymore. You are following rules. There's a difference. Then we move into the self-narrative flow. And this is about identity, the role you believe you have to play. Maybe your internal narrative is, I'm the calm one, I am the diplomatic one, I am the person who brings people together, I am not difficult and I'm not aggressive, and I'm definitely not one of those leaders who needs to be the loudest person in the room. And again, beautiful. Until your identity becomes a cage. Because now speaking clearly doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It feels inconsistent with who you believe you are. And this is something I see constantly in coaching. People don't resist new behavior because they don't know how to do it. They resist behavior because it threatens their identity. Sometimes you know exactly what you should say. You even rehearse it in the car, right? Or in the shower. And in the shower, by the way, you are magnificent, clear, powerful, articulate, basically CEO of the entire universe. And then you enter the leadership meeting room and someone says, so, any thoughts? And you go, well, maybe, I don't know, just thought. Where did the CEO go? She's still there, right? But another identity took over. The identity that says, don't be too much, don't be too difficult, stay likable. And that brings us to the behavioral flow. Now we can actually see the pattern, yeah? You soften, you explain, you add disclaimers, you wait, you smile, you ask 3 questions before making a 1 statement, and you say, maybe I'm completely wrong here. You're not. Or you say, just playing devil's advocate. You're not. You say, this might be a stupid question, and then ask the most intelligent question in the room. And people often say, yeah, Kim, that's communication style. No. Repeated behavior teaches people how to read you. Which brings us to the 4th flow, the relational flow. Your impact in the system, because people learn from you. Teams learn from you. Organizations learn from you. They learn who speaks first, who challenges, who decides, who needs reassurance, who will push back, and who will eventually accommodate. So if you repeatedly soften your position, you wait for permission and prioritize everyone else's perspective before stating your own, the system learns something. Kim will accommodate. Sarah won't change. Sarah won't challenge this, I mean. Anna needs more time. She'd probably agree. So, not because anyone had a secret meeting and decided to underestimate you. No. Systems don't need evil people to create bad dynamics. They need repetition. That's all. Repeated behavior becomes relational expectations. And relational expectations becomes reputation. And this is why I say your reputation is not built by your intentions. It's built by patterns other people can observe. So now let's go back to the leadership advice. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. Wonderful principle, right? I mean that. So perspective taking is essential in leadership. But here's my question. How quickly do you leave your own perspective? Because some people are incredibly skilled at understanding everyone except themselves. They walk into conflict and immediately think, maybe he's under pressure. Maybe she didn't mean it that way. Maybe they're going through something. Maybe I wasn't clear enough. Maybe I should have communicated differently. Maybe. And I'm sitting there in a coaching session thinking, wow, fascinating. We've analyzed immediately 7 people. But hey, can we talk about you now? What did you think? What did you want? What did you experience? What was crossed for you? Perspective taking is a leadership strength. Self-abandonment is not. And sometimes they look very familiar from the outside. And here's another principle. Avoid arguments. Again, yes, not every disagreement needs to become a battle. I have 0 interest in leaders who turn every meeting into an intellectual gladiator combat. It's totally exhausting. But avoiding unnecessary arguments is very different from avoiding tension. Leadership creates tension, not because leadership is aggressive, no, because leadership involves decisions, priorities, resources, standards change, and people will always agree, will not always agree with you. So if your nervous system interprets disagreement as relational danger, you will call avoidance emotional intelligence. Ouch, I know. But stay with me. You might say, I'm choosing my battles, when actually you haven't chosen a battle for 6 years, for example. You might say, I don't want to create unnecessary tension, but the tension is already there. You're just carrying all of it internally. This is why leadership behavior cannot be understood without identity. The same behavior can come from completely different places, right? Silence can be strategic, or silence can be fear. Listening can be presence, or listening can be disappearance. Flexibility can be wisdom, or flexibility can be a complete lack of boundaries. You cannot understand behavior by looking at behavior alone. You have to understand the flow underneath it. And I want to be very clear here. This is not an argument for becoming louder. No. I don't believe women or men need to copy the most stereotypically dominant leadership behavior in the room. Please don't. We have enough people interrupting each other already. This is about alignment. Do my thoughts, my identity, my behavior, and my relational impact actually align? That's the question. Because if I believe I have something important to contribute, but my behavior constantly hides that contribution, there is a disconnect. If I see myself as a leader, but the system experiences me primarily as the person who accommodates, there is a disconnect. If I value honesty, but I soften every difficult message until nobody understands it, there is a disconnect. Because you're performing one thing, thinking another, feeling something else, and creating an impact you didn't intend. That's not presence, that's fragmentation. So what do we do instead? I want to give you a very simple question. Actually 4 questions. Because of course I do. I build a 4-flow framework, right? I have a brand to maintain. So the next time you notice yourself holding back, softening or over-explaining, or immediately adjusting to someone else's perspective, ask yourself, what am I thinking? What meaning am I giving this situation? So that's the cognitive flow. Then, who am I trying to be right now? The nice one, the calm one, the easy one, the competent one, the person who never needs anything. So that's the self-narrative flow. And then, what am I actually doing? Not what I do intend, right? What behavior would a camera like this one observe? Am I speaking, waiting, softening, explaining? And that's the third, the behavioral flow. And finally, what is the system learning from me? And that's the relational flow. What expectation am I creating? Because, and this is important, people respond to the patterns you repeatedly show them, not the person you secretly know you could be. So maybe the answer is not speak more. Maybe the answer is understanding why you stop speaking. Maybe the answer is not be more assertive. Maybe the answer is understanding which identity feels threatened when you are assertive. And maybe the answer is not set more boundaries. Maybe the answer is understanding what you believe will happen when someone doesn't like your boundaries. This is the work I find fascinating. Because once you see the flow, behavior starts making sense. You're not randomly bad at leadership. Your behavior has a logic. The question is whether that logic still serves you. So yes, Smile, listen, be genuinely interested in people, see things from their perspective, build relationships. Yes, please do. These are beautiful human skills and principles. But don't confuse being good with being absent. Don't confuse listening with silence. And don't confuse empathy with self-erasure. And don't confuse being liked with being trusted to lead. Because leadership requires something else as well. It requires a self, a perspective, a position. Someone has to present for people to trust them. And that someone is you. I'm Kim Seidler, and this is Power, Presence, Purpose. If this episode made you think about of a moment where you made yourself smaller in the name of being professional, I'd love to know. And if you know someone who is an excellent listener and incredibly thoughtful leader, and maybe disappears just a little too often, send them this episode. So I'll see you the next time.